Hi, everybody. Kris Vallotton here. This month on Cultural Catalyst, we're diving into the most pressing issues of our time, the mental health epidemic. Now more than ever, people are struggling with anxiety, depression, fear, and even suicide. And I believe it's time to have real conversations about what's happening beneath the surface. That's why I'm launching this special series, and we'll bring on some special guests to talk about spiritual, emotional, practical aspects of mental health and how do you actually get free. This is a topic I'm deeply passionate about, and it's a big reason why I wrote my book, Deliver Us from Evil. In it, I explore the unseen battle of our minds and the powerful tools God has given us to break free.
When I talk to folks whose parents struggle with addiction, one of the common refrains is it's like them trying to hug a ghost. They're there, but they're not there. And social media has done that to every one of us. Those ridiculous, stupid phones, man, have taken us out of our own homes, even though our bodies are there. And our kids are getting the message, oh, I'm less important than that. I'm not worth being loved in that way. And I think I think we are watching it in real time, what happens when a generation of kid gets the message we're not worth being loved.
Well, welcome to Cultural Catalyst, where we teach you how to live fully alive, co-labor with God, and change the world. I'm your host, Kris Vallotton, and today I have Dr. John Deloney on, who I actually got the privilege of sitting in one of your teachings in a Dave Ramsey executive kind of retreat with like 5,000 people. If you don't know Dr. John, this is Mental Health Month for us, so he's a best-selling author, speaker, co-host of the radio program, The Ramsey Show, but you also host your own show, the Dr. Deloney Show podcast, and two of your books I'm super interested in, Building the Non-Anxious Life and Redefining Anxiety. So that's pretty cool. I've had 2 nervous breakdowns, so
I've only had one, man. So I'll get on it.
Well, you're younger though. I'm 70 years old. You're much younger, so you can have another one.
I'll catch you.
So, hey, tell us a little bit about your journey first. Would you just introduce yourself to my audience? That would really be great.
Yeah, you bet. I think the biography in a nutshell, or the autobiography in a nutshell, is I was raised by a homicide detective in Houston, Texas. He was a SWAT hostage negotiator. And then halfway through my childhood, he quit over a weekend and it was a new job at the time, this job called youth minister. And we went to what at the time was considered an outrageously big church of 1,000 people back then. And they needed somebody. We had 200 or 300 kids in the youth group. And so he quit over a weekend. And then my mom grew up in a faith community that she wasn't allowed to go to college. And so she, at the age of 42, after doing being a stay-at-home mom and doing she worked in the craft room in our church, took her first community college class. She graduated that was at age 42. She graduated her PhD at 57 and got tenured at 63. And then she's in her mid 70s and she's just taught another class in Germany or something. So she had this crazy back life. So that's the backdrop. So anytime I walk into a therapist office and she finds out my dad was a cop and a minister, then she's just like, oh, cool. I'm going to get a lake house, right? So that's the backdrop. And then my sister was a savant, was one of the smartest people. My brother missed 2 questions on the SAT. And then I was like a Texas high school football player. And so I was the dumb kid, which is why out of insecurity, I ended up with 2 PhDs. Like, hey, look at me. I'm smart. I promise. And so since I was a little kid, I've just been chasing, hey, look at me. And like, where do I have value? And I remember being a young kid and remembering the just caustic financial struggles of being a cop's kid and then being a minister's kid. And I remember very distinctly in my mind, I remember my dad is he's trying to protect me, but I remember being at the grocery store, him putting the ATM card in. He knows there's no money in there, but he's got 3 little kids, and maybe they'll let it, remember the old days, they might let it go through and they'd give you that huge late fee, but it was worth it. Right. Yeah. And I remember as a young kid saying, if that's what the public thinks of public service, I'm out. And so I started chasing money, and man, I got a fancy pants degree that I got to hang on my wall, and I got to be called associate dean of a university, and I made more money than my dad. And I remember I drove 3 hours into another city to meet with a buddy of mine who's a medical doctor, unannounced. And I busted into his office and said, "Hey man, I'm about to go over the edge here. I'm not all right." Wow. And then it just started a 10-year walk back. Like, man, what happened? Were you serving the Lord during that time? I was a university administrator at a faith-based university, and I would teach Sunday school, and I would teach the college classes on Sunday nights, that kind of thing. But I was in no formal ministerial position. And what was your journey into psychology like? Why did you choose psychology? Well, I started working in universities. I was a high school teacher for a few years out of college, and then I started working in universities in 2004, I think, 3 or 4. And I mean, I had a ringside seat to 10 years of, hey, this is like what I want to be when I grow up, and can you help me find a job? And we write me a letter to get in grad school. And then about 2010, 11, and 12 is when it started. Hey, I don't think I want to be alive anymore. Hey, my mom and dad just left each other. My mom just took her life. My dad just is in the hospital for rehab. And I found myself completely out of tools. I was over my head. And at the same time, my life had imploded. And let's be like, here's me looking at the data. I'm a 6'2" Texas male. Right. I went to college on a track scholarship, and my mom and dad have been married 50 plus years. I have everything, and it was tough growing up, but I never missed a meal. Right. There's no way this thing called anxiety or depression or whatever you want to call it is going to bury me. I've got everything. And yet here I am banging on my buddy's door in his medical practice saying, dude, I need help now. And so, I under the guise at the university I was working, I was at Texas Tech University, under the guise of, hey, I need some more skills. I'm just going to start taking counseling courses in the graduate program, just nickel and diming it. I also wanted to know, hey, what's happening with me? What in the world's happening with my marriage? What's happening with my own head? And I got everything, and I'm falling apart. And so it just was a slow but sure, start taking more classes, and then ended up with a second PhD in it. So your mom actually took her life? No. I'm sorry. I was. These are my students coming to me over and over, day after day, with the new thing. Yeah. No. Gosh, I'm glad I asked that question. I'm like, oh, it was just students that their worries changed from what am I going to be when I grow up to do I still want to be alive? And that's of course right when we handed everybody a cell phone and everything exploded. But that was, I just had a ringside seat to watching an entire generation of young people just implode. So you got a couple degrees around psychology, kind of partly to help you understand you. Right. And what did you learn about you? I learned I was on the very front end of, it was like entering into a new world that we'd created for ourselves that our bodies are not equipped to live in. And it's the new frontier where you don't communicate with people in a room. You communicate them via zeros and ones. And you don't have to go through the awkwardness of trying to hold someone's hand through a whole movie and an awkward first kiss. You just Google whatever, you Google pornography and it's all there for you. I don't have to go get food. I just hit a button and some kid in skinny jeans and a mustache brings it to me on his bicycle. Right? I mean, we were just in beta of this new world. And I think within 5 or 10 years, everybody just started spinning up. How do you think isolation impacts mental health, and how do people rebuild true community? I agree. I think that, I play basketball with a bunch of guys at the YMCA. Good for you. Probably, I would say 20% to 30% of those guys come in with a headset on, or earbuds in, we're playing basketball. You kind of need to communicate.
and they're literally, they come with a headset on, and a lot of them with a hoodie, can't see their head. And I'm like, dude, you don't have enough skills to interact with the 20 guys that are in the gym playing basketball. Like,
yeah, but I think beneath the skill set, I think skills are lost when culture tells you you don't need them anymore, or culture tells you they're not safe. And so think of the culture has taught all of us that any one of these other basketball players may vote differently than you, and that means they hate you. And any one of these other players may be trying to hurt you, steal from you, and so. Yeah, man. Suddenly you wrap yourself up in this cocoon with headphones. I mean, it's a very safe place to hide, right?
Totally.
Like I have a 9-year-old little girl, man. She'll still hide behind her hair sometimes, and she's right there. But man, it feels like I'm safe.
Yeah, and like I'm like, this is so my subject. Like, like isolation. People not having, like, you know more about your sports teams than you know about your parents. Mm-hmm. You're raised by a machine. Yeah. Like, literally locked up in your room. Your claim to fame is how many people follow you. Right. On Instagram or Facebook or TikTok. It's like crazy. Like, how do you think we migrate back to true community?
I think you have to. It just reminds me. My granddad was. He's a World War II vet, but before that, when he was a little kid, they gave him it was a funny thing. Like, you give a little kid a cigarette, it calms him down, right? Yeah. And then in short order, everyone realized, oh man, and remember even going to World War I, it was like, take your rifle and take your cigarettes. Those are your friends, right? And then it was like, oh man, this is killing everybody. Yeah. And then the Not Stop Smoking campaign started for the next 40 years. I think we're there. Like, I think it's full stop. The only way to turn the ship is, number one, say it out loud. We are lonelying ourselves to death. We've created the loneliest generation in human history, and it's killing us. And then I think the next phrase has helped clarify it for me is, your body, if it recognizes you've got nobody to call, right? You've seen the statistics. 1 out of 2 people have nobody to call. 80% of people's friends don't even know what's going on in their own hearts and minds. If your amygdala, if you, a little part of your brain that's designed to detect threat, if it detects that, it would be failing you if it let you sleep at night. It would be failing you if let you have a deep, intimate, like, romantic adventure with your wife. It would be failing you because it's not time for intimacy. It's not time for sleep. It's time to not die. And that's all of us, all of the time. Yeah. And so we're reactive. We've got nobody. And the only thing we have is this constant drumbeat of whoever they are, they're coming for you. They are coming for you. And I look at my dad, he's in his 70s. Like, the world shifted underneath him, and it just said, they're trying to kill you. They're trying to kill you. And it used to be them over there. Now it's your neighbors, man. They're coming for you. And it's the people in your church. It's the people that drive that kind of car. It's the people that wear, it's just bananas. And so until everyone starts beating another drum, which is, all right, this is killing us. Everybody's got cigarettes, and we got to stop. And then, like, when I hear of a 70-year-old pastor getting up, putting the knee braces on, and going to cut up on a court, that gives me hope that this thing's going to turn around, right? When my son is 14, now granted, I'm a kind of a Luddite, but when he gave up his phone for Lent, my 14-year-old, and he said, I just feel better without it, Dad. I thought, all right, we got a shot. All right, we're gonna have a shot.
Exactly.
Right? And so I think it's gonna have to just be a bunch of 30 and 40 and 50-year-olds being super awkward and weird and saying, hey man, will you just grab whatever's in your fridge and come over to my house? I'm not cleaning up for you either. And we'll play some weird game, but we're going to hang out. I don't know another path.
Yeah. And you just have to, step past your fear, right? I love,
just go be weird. Yeah.
Joyce Meyer's book, I only read the title, like, Do It Afraid.
Yeah, but that's it.
I actually think, and you probably are familiar with Brene Brown about the power of vulnerability.
Yep.
And I think that we have to learn skills, right? We got to learn skills because we don't even know how to have a relationship anymore.
Yeah, that's right. But also, I do think I think this gets unfairly, I don't know. I think social psychologists love to beat up on this, but I think there's some truth to it universally. Women often build social connections kneecap to kneecap, and men do it shoulder to shoulder. We hear that trope, but there's a lot of truth in it. And if we look at our culture that we've built, Dude, we all think we're a burden, Kris. And no man wants to burden their neighbor. And so we don't ask to borrow a lawnmower. We don't ask to borrow sugar. We just Instacart it. We don't ask for a ride. We Uber. We don't ask somebody to help us move. We just put a mover on a credit card. And we've created this world where we don't have to interact with each other. But it's kind of like when during COVID, when they said, hey, everybody, there's 30 million of you that are non-essential. Everybody else go home. It was Mike Rowe that told me this. He's like, they actually told 300 million Americans, hey, we don't need you. Just go home and we'll mail checks. And we all went crazy, right? And so similarly, when you suddenly are able to outsource basic human connection, and by the way, when you Instacart something, it's convenient, it's awesome. But the greatest gift you can give your neighbor is saying, hey, can you help me? Because it gives us purpose. Everybody likes to have somebody come to you and say, hey, can you help me out? And of course, we like to groan about it. And, oh my gosh, I got to go help Bill with his yard. But you get home and you did something, right? You have purpose. And so you rob your neighbor, but no man wants to. So we've taken away all shoulder to shoulder activities. And then we tell men, go sit in a circle and sing Kumbaya together. And they're like, I'm not doing that. And so what do? They go have another drink. They watch another episode. They play another video game, or they pay other grown men to play sports for them, right? In the form of professional teams, or even better. This is my favorite, Kris. Fantasy sports, where grown men use other real grown men as fantasy action figures. And they're not overlords. They're called coaches, and they like have coaching imaginary teams. It's so insane, right? Exactly. And I remember my dad, just his old church league softball. I remember we'd play the Catholics, and they got to have beer. And I was like, that doesn't sound fair, right? I mean, like all those conversations are gone, right? But watching my dad play with his buddies, and it's all gone. So I think it's just a matter of we're going to re-inject that back in the system.
Yeah, it's interesting because I grew up in the Bay Area, San Jose, California. Had a nervous breakdown at 22. Was married. I'd already been married 1 year and had one child. So we moved to this little town, what you probably have never heard of, called Weaverville, California. I mean, think about it. You can't even pretend to be an intellectual when you're from Weaverville. You know what I'm saying? and we lived there in the woods 20 years in a community of 3,000 people. Well, when we first moved, we moved to a little town called Lewiston. That was 900 people. And the reason I mention it is because you're talking about community, and part of building community is you go to your neighbor and ask for sugar. You know, hey, you guys, but you can't survive in a mountain community without neighbors. It's impossible. That's right. You know, your car's in a ditch. There's 4 feet of snow. You run out of wood in a really tough winter, and you're like, hey, you got some wood I can borrow till I can get out and cut my own, you know? And, it's a forever thing. And so your neighbors, and we lived out in the woods. So, you know, your let's say 7 or 8 neighbors that surround you within a half a mile radius there, they become, it doesn't matter if they're Mormons, they're Catholics, they're atheists, whatever.
Yeah, I don't have time for that, man. Yeah, I don't have time for that. I don't have time to fight you over intellect. Like, can I have some wood, right? Hey, This is a great story. I was living in downtown Nashville with my family. We moved very similarly out to the woods outside of Nashville and lived on some acres. It's always been one of my little fantasies to be out there, like watching too much YouTube homesteading kind of thing. Yeah, exactly. And a big rainstorm came and washed out my gravel driveway. And my neighbor, who's a 75-year-old farmer, I just hear this tractor and it comes up down his driveway. He resets his whole driveway and then he grades mine. Well, I went over to his house and I told my son, I made a big deal. I was like, hey, you're coming with me. I'm going to show you what you do when somebody does that. And I'd written him a big old check. And he wasn't there, so I left it in an envelope. When I saw him again a few weeks later, he said, hey, come here. And I came down. He said, you're never going to do that again. I don't want your money. And I said, no. And Kris, here's his line. This is a true story, a direct line. I said, no, I'm going to pay somebody if they're going to do that work. And he looked at me and said, son, I'm your neighbor. And that was it. And then a few months later, got washed out again. He did it again. My wife has this massive garden. She made him a big sourdough bread, and I'm a big hunter, so I took him over some venison and some pickles from the garden. I took it over in a basket with my son. Kris, that grown man, that 70-something-year-old farmer, started crying. He came over and gave me a hug, and I thought, oh, we gave him something with our hands. We gave him something from our garden.
Yep.
We gave him something from our heart. And that he didn't want my money. He wanted connection. And it was like, oh, I'm learning from this guy. I got all the degrees in the world and I'm learning what survival and connection actually looks like.
Yeah. And you think about it like in the agricultural age, which would be my grandfather, would be your probably great grandfather, right? I mean, you didn't go to a gym to work out.
No, you'd be insane if you did that.
Yeah.
Look, I need every calorie. It's hot out there.
Exactly. And our kids, you had kids so that they worked on the farm. Like, I don't know what you think about this, and I'm not making a political statement, but we have all this criticism about the Chinese putting their kids to child labor. And I'm not saying that's okay, but I'm saying that we did it for like 200 years. Where you had a big
all I'm
family.
telling you is since he was 10 years old, my son has been going over and cleaning the horse stalls of the neighbor's ranch for money. But he's got to learn how it works. Now he's not working 9-hour days and right.
Yeah, no, it's not a sweat box, but
he's slowly learning. And then I'll tell you this, he's about to turn 15. And so we're talking about getting a learner's permit and a car and all that. When my wife told me what he has in his savings account, I was stuck. I worked for Dave Ramsey, for crying out loud. And I was like, you have how much money? And she's like, he's been working for the last 6 years. So it's a cool thing, right?
It is.
But it gives him a sense of autonomy and purpose and connection. And by the way, that other man that lives across the creek from us, he can teach my son things that I can't teach him about how to move horses and how to clean this.
It takes a village, bro. It takes
That's
a
right.
village.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
The other thing, the other thing is, the reason why our schools are 9 months long and 2.5, 3 months off for summer is because
it's an ag calendar. Yeah.
It was agricultural calendar, right? Like who's gonna send their kids to school in harvest? Nobody. So it's like our whole system was based on, kids working on the farm with us in the fields, 4, 5, 6 years old, helping to pick fruit, helping to, prune trees. And
life wasn't separate from work. It was a whole life, and we play together and we laugh together and we make sure we all have something to eat and we make sure we have a place to live. It was a thing we did together, and it's just been bifurcated up and sliced and diced. And there is some gross abuses across the board in any one of those segments, of course. Yeah. So, but instead of addressing some of those, I think we take these big leaping sweeps and sweep everything off the table. And I don't know, man.
Well, also, since the invention of the light bulb, speaking of anxiety and connection, since the invention of the light bulb, we sleep an average of 1.5 hours less a night.
Yeah, that's right.
And so, it isn't just the light bulb now, it's entertainment, right? So you're dead tired and you're like, I got to watch the FBI before we go to bed. It's like, you're like, what the frick am I doing?
I'm going to listen to a murder podcast on the way home from work, and then I'm going to watch NCIS Murderville, to go to sleep to, right? And then we lose an hour of REM sleep, and man, it's bananas.
And all that, and then we we're inside all day, so we don't get sunlight.
Right.
We're not in the field, so we don't get exercise. We sleep an hour and a half less, so we don't get that REM sleep. We're not. Our minds aren't rebuilding themselves, and then we eat processed food. And we're wondering, I don't know why I'm anxious. And then we isolate ourselves.
Well, here's the thing. Then we go to a doctor and they're like, oh, you have this symptom of clusters. You are defective. And that goes back to my chief premise, which is we've just created a world that our bodies can't exist in. And then we blame our bodies for it. I tend to believe, of course, there's outside of the bell curve stuff, and there's neurological issues and all that. So I know that.
Of course there is. Absolutely.
But if you're anxious right now, or if you have a low-level hum of things aren't okay, I would suggest your body's working perfectly. There's nothing wrong with you. And going back to a faith context, when Jesus says, don't worry, man, I think you've got to read the first half of Matthew 5 before you get in and start lecturing people for worrying, because he gives you the steps on how to build a life that is not anxious. And then there are times that I choose to sit there and ruminate or have imaginary conversations with my wife. I'm going to tell her when she walks, I'm never going to do that. But my body doesn't know. So I gin up these imaginary conversations with her or my boss or whatever. I think that's what he's talking about. Not the biological process of your body has detected, hey, you're not safe in the political environment, in the economic environment, in your professional environment. There's AI going to take your job. You owe everybody in the world money. And man, if they take your job, you're out of a house, you're out of a car. Like your body should be ringing off the hook. And so it's this indictment we have on these amazingly designed bodies. And I like to circle back and say, whoa. What if your body's right? What if little kids aren't designed to be crammed into a classroom, staring at a computer screen for 14 hours a day? What if their overexcitement and stimulation or trouble focusing? What if their bodies are right? Then it's us as adults that need to fix the systems.
That's so good. And it's part of what you talked about in the Ramsey thing. I remember you talking about, kids sitting in a, 4x4 box for 6 hours a day. And we call that learning.
It's cruel. Yeah. It's cruel.
And then we drug them so they can sit there. Right.
Yeah. There's my first PhD is in education. There's no pedagogical science. There's no science of learning or teaching anywhere, any place that says that's the best way to learn. Zero, none, zero. That doesn't exist. And so we have to ask bigger questions, but also not throw the baby out with the bathwater. The alternative isn't to burn every school down and just let kids go feral. That's not the right thing either. Right. No. So, we just have Kris, we have this, like, it's just everything is a barbell, man. And can we make a new third way that's both and get some
I was riding with I was in the UK, and one of my students picked me up, young guy with the kind of crappy car, picked me up from the airport to take me to wherever I was going, hotel. And we're driving along, and I look over, and I have an automotive background, so I have three repair shops and 9 businesses all around automotive. So I'm kind of trained to, like. So we're driving along, and I look over at his dashboard, and it's got a piece of black tape on his dashboard. I go, bro, what's the black tape for? He goes, there's a red light that came on, and I couldn't figure out how to get it off, so I just put black tape over it. I go, dude, that's called an idiot light for a reason.
That's called the American mental and emotional health system right there.
Exactly.
Right there.
Is that true?
Well done. Isn't
that true?
That's 100%. 100%.
Like just take some anti-anxiety medication and just keep on destroying your mind and your body, right?
Or say something insane like, oh, well, this marriage just ran its course because it doesn't feel a certain way anymore. Or, let's balance my entire self-worth as a dad on the athletic performance of my 9-year-old on a little league field. Let's make my 9-year-old carry the weight of his father's emotional regulation. Let's do that too. That sounds right. We don't address these really core issues. Let's talk about, like, the millions of men who wake up every day and they've got no purpose because they don't have any jobs because we took them away. Like, let's have some of those harder conversations. Or the generation of women that was told, hey, if the greatest contribution you can make on planet Earth is in service to a corporation, not in you deciding what do you want for your life and you co-creating a world with somebody. Actually, the best thing is job title. Right. Like we can talk about these big meta issues, but it's just so much easier to just put tape over the thing and say, you know what, go to yoga class and get some special tea and let's call it good.
No, it's absolutely true. And then, the worst of all right now is, like suicide's a pandemic. So
it's wild.
I mean, the challenging thing is we're losing suicide was the number 2 killer among youth, right? For a generation. But now suicide it doesn't have a gender or it doesn't have a generation. We're just seeing people just take their lives. Like, they're so distraught. They absolutely, that black tape's been over their idiot light for so long, they lose hope that they could ever turn their life around. Yeah, and I think that's the saddest of all, because once that happens, there's no turning around.
Well, and you're also fed a steady dose via that algorithm, man. And I just think there's such a monster contribution with that thing, feeding you, telling you, suggesting things over and over and over again.
Yeah.
It just brings the temperature down on everything, and just it turns the light out of hope.
Yeah. I mean, you're a public person. I am too. The social media is like the wild, wild west. It is. I just wrote a post on this the other day. It is crazy how people interact on social media. Think about this. If you went to Walmart or wherever your favorite store is, Home Depot, and you walked down the aisle and people treated you the way and talked to you the way they do on social media, you would never go back to that store. You would
No,
never go shopping.
no. Or you'd be in jail because you'd knock their teeth out with some of the stuff that they say, right?
Exactly.
Chris, my wife was a guest on my show for my 500th episode. And a few nights after it went out, I'm sitting in my bedroom and the show producer, her name's Kelly, she's a great friend, and she texted and said, "Please God, tell me your wife hasn't seen these comments." And right when I said, "What?" And right when that happened, I looked up and my wife entered into the room and she was sobbing in a way that I haven't seen her sob outside of major tragedies. And it was so caustic. But my exhale is like when I put science out and people want to come back and forth with science, you read the study wrong, or I think you've got this. That's great. That's iron sharpens iron. I'm okay with that.
Absolutely.
That's learning. But I don't know anybody that's whole and well or is having a good day that stops to do that kind of hurt. And so I almost have like I don't want to say it's pity, but it's a deep compassion. Something's not well with you, and I'm going to treat it like my house. And if you're going to talk to me or my family like that, then I'm asking you to leave my house, right? And it's just I just don't put up with it because it's just I can live like that.
I'm the same way. I'm just like, hey, yeah. And people say, well, you're a public person. I'm like, wait a second. When you go to a public place, you can't crap on the lawn and
that's right,
windows and
right.
Graffiti on the walls. Like I'm
subject to scrutiny, subject to your disagreement. Absolutely. I put myself out there. But not scrutiny to you. Yeah. You crapping on everything in my life. Not
You don't get the graffiti on my walls. You don't get to tell people I'm an idiot.
Or my kids or my wife. That's right.
Yeah. And so, but I think it comes back to what we kind of open with, like the whole idea of isolation. People get isolated, they get depressed, they get discouraged, and it's really a manifestation of what's happening in them. I was raised by my father drowned when I was 3, and I was raised by two very, very violent stepfathers. And I left at 17. I found Christ at 18, and I realized, and I spent my early years like my fathers didn't like me, so why should I like me?
Right.
Like if they don't like me, if the person who's supposed to teach you love doesn't like you, then that becomes that's
the story you tell yourself.
Yeah. And so I would say a couple of years later, I realized like they couldn't love me because they didn't love them.
Yeah.
Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. You don't love you, there's no way to love them. So I realized later, like this was not a commentary on who I am. This is a commentary on who they are.
There you go.
And I think there's a lot of people.
So right. That's right.
I think there's a lot of people that are miserable, and they're just trying to find an outlet someplace. And social media has become a place for isolated people to, build community. But unfortunately, they've lost the skills of community because nobody on a regular basis talks to their neighbor the way you talk to people on social media. It's just
That's
insane.
Right.
It's crazy.
Well, and Chris, can I think the new one step removed from, I think there's I would say it's a caricature. It's a lived experience for you. The two stepdads who are very violent, and we all can read the data on child abuse and step parents. Like it's there. But you being a young kid, getting the clear message, I'm not worthy of being loved.
Yeah.
These guys aren't there. I think what we haven't recognized is one step removed is a mom or dad who's not abusive in any way, but who is so glued to their phone that their 6-year-old daughter gets the message. That thing is more beautiful than me. Or the 13-year-old kid who's like my mom. I always talk to when I talk to folks whose parents struggle with addiction. One of the common refrains is it's like them trying to hug a ghost. They're there, but they're not there. And social media has done that to every one of us. Those ridiculous, stupid phones, man, have taken us out of our own homes, even though our bodies are there. And our kids are getting the message, oh, I'm less important than that. I'm not worth being loved in that way. And I think I think we are watching it in real time. What happens when a generation of kid gets the message we're not worth being loved, and it's a mess, man. It's a mess.
Yeah, it is, and it's paying attention to the shiny things. I had an encounter with the Lord. This is probably only about 7-8 years ago, and he said to me, "You're never present." And I'm like, "What?" He said, "I have encounters for you all day long with myself through other people, but you're rarely there. When you're in this place, you're thinking about the next place you're supposed to be at. When you're with this person, you're thinking about another person. It's like you're just never in the moment." And I felt the Lord say to me, "I want you to be present in the moment." And it became a discipline. And it started with, we're having Thanksgiving. I've got 4 kids and 13 grandkids. And we're having dinner around the table. And my 4 kids are recounting their childhood, which is always interesting because I think my kids had a great childhood. And they're like, yeah, and they're telling stories. And I'm like, and they made the statement, yeah, Dad was never home. And I'm like, whoa, because we have a very sarcastic sense of humor. So I'm like,
yeah, we do too.
That was painful. And they're like, oh yeah, Dad, you're never home. I'm like, I never traveled. I coached basketball, soccer, baseball, went to every track meet. Like, what are you talking about? And then that was like a week later, so I'm like, that was painful. I'm like, I'm never home. Yeah. I, that night that I had that encounter, I heard the Lord say, your children weren't experiencing your physical presence. They were experiencing your attention. You are in their presence, but you are not present.
Wow.
And I started changing my life. I'm like, I'll tell you, it changed my life. Not, I don't want to be stupid and say overnight, but I started saying, okay, when would you know who Jack Hayford was?
I don't know.
Very famous Foursquare preacher. He at one time he was the second most famous Christian under Billy Graham, and I got to meet him, and I knew some people who knew him well, and he came to speak in our church. This is probably 7 years ago, and they all said this about Jack. Jack, when you're in Jack's presence, you feel like you're the only person in the room. So I had heard that for years, and he was like a famous person, like a Ramsey. Never met him, but as a young man followed him, got the cassette tapes a month, the whole thing. So he preached at our church, and I said to the person who takes care of our hospitality, I said, see if I could have a half hour with Jack. So we get in the room. We're in my office. Jack sits down. I sit down next to him. And as soon as we sit down, he goes, hey, Kris, I've read 2 of your books. And I'm like, you did? I didn't even know he knew who I was. He's like, wow. I've read 2 of your books. And he starts telling me about my books. And I'm like, oh, well, thank you very much. And we ended up an hour together. And I left there. And as I'm leaving, I said to myself, I felt like I was the most honored person in the room. And then I remembered that's what everybody says about Jack.
Wow. Like
Jack is like Barnabas. He's like the son of encouragement. Like you leave him. Like I always say, some people bring happiness wherever they go, and some people bring happiness whenever they go. Right.
I remember when I was at the height of my anxiousness, I was meeting, his name is Randy Harris, and he was a bioethics professor, but also a monk. And he led a group of students that they'd commit. These are athletes, Mohawk kids, Jesus nerds, like all these undergraduate students. They'd commit to a year of living the Sermon on the Mount. And there was just this, they'd memorize it together. These are not an academic thing. It was just a thing to do on the side. Well, I was meeting with him, and it was right on the back end of the economic recession. And I remember my whole mission in life, Kris, was that I thought people were sleepwalking through life. They needed to be amped up. And I remember him saying, everybody keeps coming to me, because he's a sage, right? So everybody kept coming to him for advice on what the market and the economy and whatever. And he said, I don't know anything about money. But he said, the one thing I want people to be is a little more peaceful after they've talked to me than before. And I remember thinking, oh, I want that. And then I remember thinking, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do that. And it became.
I make people more anxious when they get my present.
Well, that was the revelation for me is, people are worse off after having been in my presence.
Yeah.
And people are less at peace. And I think the currency of our age, like something silly, like when I'm co-hosting the Ramsey Show with Dave, something silly. Somebody will call and say, "Hey, I had this 3% mortgage that I got back in 2020 when the rates were 0, and I can't sell it for X, Y, or Z." And I always challenge people on that. But here's what I always tell them: "Hey, I'm not playing your math game. I'm not playing if I hold this here and then get this 2%." The new currency for in this new century, I'm solving for peace. I'm not solving for extra percent APR. I'm solving for peace.
Whoa.
If nobody can take my house away from me, I'll sleep. If I have an extra bedroom so that any one of my friends or neighbors or community can have a place to stay when they need a place to stay, I'm solving for peace. If I have enough food that I can serve my neighbors, I'm solving for peace. And I'm just not playing that game anymore. And I tell you what, man, suddenly your anxiety alarms stop ringing off the hook when you stop trying to play a game that is designed, like, you cannot beat a slot machine. They're better than you. They have better technology. They're just better than you. They just are. And if you opt out of the slot machine and just decide, whoa, I'm going to solve for peace. I'm going to leave with my $40 in my pocket and I'm going to go in the sunshine. And man, it resets everything. And your body goes, all right, cool. John's back in the driver's seat. We're all right now. I don't have to sound the alarms on everything. And it's a totally different paradigm for living our life. And I think that's what I keep going back to. Oh, that's what Jesus means. That's what he means. Don't worry. Opt out of this thing, man. Get out of the matrix. Take both the red pill and the blue pill. Just get out. Get out of the matrix. The whole thing, man. And it's just a different way to live, solving for peace.
Yeah. The rest of that one scripture says, don't worry about tomorrow. And he says, for each day has enough trouble of its own.
Your day's already awful. Like, just deal with that, right? Brene Brown calls it dress rehearsing tragedy. We think it's helpful thinking to imagine what's coming and then pretend like, I'm going to say this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do my karate moves. You're not doing any of that stuff. And it's just robs from your ability to solve the current drama you have in that day. Yeah. It's beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah. And it's not what happens to you so much as the stories you make up about what you fear will happen to you. Absolutely. That creates most of the anxiety in your life, right?
1,000%. Dr. Brown actually tells a great story that I've seen over and over. I've done crisis work my whole career. So sitting doing death notifications and just sitting with people in the worst of the worst. And she tells a great story about a husband who always had one foot out of the boat when his wife got sick, because he was trying to protect himself. And when she died, he realized, that wave of grief knocked us all over anyway. And all he did by keeping one foot out was rob himself of the last few years of being all in. And so we think we know what's coming good and we think we know what's coming bad, but we don't on either end. Because often, like, what if it doesn't work out? What if it does? Right? Yeah. And we're going to try to hedge how much this is going to hurt. You can hedge. It's just going to hurt. If you lose your job, you have a career as a history professor, that's what you love, and a machine takes it, it's going to hurt. It's just going to hurt. And we don't have a cultural norm for grief. That's what I think churches could really step up, is helping people with the skill set of grieving, just being sad together, not trying to make it all go away. Just, I'll sit with you, man.
Well, two things that reminds me of. One is that often the things I worry about don't happen. And the things that happen, I never worried about.
Never saw them coming. Right.
Coming, right?
That's the Semtaleb, the black swan, man. That bird's going to come and you have no idea it's coming.
Exactly. And the crazy thing is I love what you just said about the dress rehearsal. I'm rehearsing for a tragedy that rarely happens.
Right. But my body doesn't know that. My body thinks it's happening right now in real time. And so it dumps all the stress chemicals in your body. And we don't move and we just sit on our couches. And so there's no place to discharge those. And we bathe in literal stress chemicals 24. That's our life, right?
Yeah. I love what you're talking about. And man, we could probably talk for hours because it sounds like we've had a very similar journey through anxiety.
Well, I like having a fellow, someone who I appreciate you. I can tell you've been really thoughtful on this topic, man. That makes me, And to know that you're communicating that to so many people, that's really a blessing and a gift, man.
Yeah. I was on the couch for, 16 years ago. I laid on the couch for 6 months. It's very suicidal. Couldn't get off the. I mean, I had 2 nervous breakdowns. The first one, I had high anxiety, panic attacks, lasted 3.5 years, but I went to work every day. The second time, 16 years ago, I couldn't get off the couch. I could not get off the couch, and I couldn't will myself off the couch. And that, like, not my personality. It feels like you and I have a very similar personality. It's like, come on, you can get over it. Just work your way through it.
Yeah.
But I couldn't get off the couch, and so I had to learn a new way to live. It sounds like we've both been on that journey. And I took medication for about a year, and finally, little by little, I'm all for medication. I don't know how you feel about it, but I without that medication, I'd probably been on the couch for 2 years.
Yeah, the way I mean, for some depressive symptoms, medication it's one of the greatest gifts of the modern era, man. I think for most, not all, but most anxieties, the analogy I use for anxiety is it's the smoke detector in your kitchen. It's not the fire. It's the smoke detector. And medication does a great job. If you ignore, like, we've all been in that hotel room when you turn the shower on too hot and it sets off on accident, it sets off. It's that smoke detector is too finely tuned, right? It's not working right.
Yeah.
That anxiety meds, man, can really turn down the alarm sound so that I can go talk to a counselor. So I can go sit with my pastor.
Exactly.
So I can go, me and my wife can go heal our marriage. Right. It allows you to function. So, no, man, it doesn't cure anxiety, but man, it helps you function so you can do the things to put your body in a position where it can finally go, okay, we can turn the smoke alarms off because the fire's on.
I got off the couch after I took medication for about, it took about 3 or 4 weeks for it lifted, the depression lifted enough that I could read a book. I could actually go get help because my mind,
right.
I was in a spiral. I couldn't get out. And then,
can I say that for men, I remember the night I had my prescription at my kitchen table, and my son was 2 and he was asleep. My wife was asleep. And I remember sitting at my table sobbing because I'd failed them. I remember that I failed them. Yeah. But I knew I didn't have another path. And now I look back in retrospect and think that may have been the bravest thing I did, was going to a friend and him writing me a prescription saying, hey, just for a season, but you need this. And like, that takes real courage sometimes.
John, I carried those pills without taking them for 4 months.
Yeah.
Because my pastor friends, my leaders said, oh no, you just need Jesus.
Oh, I've
been a Christian since I was 18. So finally my wife was the one, after about month 5 on the couch. She said, I don't care what those people say. You are taking that freaking medication and you're getting off this couch. And I took it. Of course, you know how it works. It it's not like an aspirine. Didn't get me off the couch day 1. But yeah. And then,
it's amazing, dude.
Took it for a year and thankfully learned how to live differently, learn how to eat differently, learn how to sleep differently, learn how to think differently, most importantly. And I was able to get off the medication completely. But
it's amazing how Christians can be okay with chemotherapy and we're okay with knee replacements, but man, we have a hang up when it comes to some of the advances that can help us begin to redirect and transform our lives. It's wild.
Yeah. Or, you're a diabetic and you don't take insulin. I mean, seriously, really? John, grab that book off your back, right behind you, right there, your book. Yeah.
It's the eloquently placed product placement here. Yeah.
That's perfect. I just wanted you to say something about it, because we've been talking about the problem, but I want people to get your book to help.
Man, I really appreciate that. The book's called Building an Unanxious Life, and the idea goes back to that smoke alarm analogy, and my belief that we have a culture that's disempowering, that says, hey, you have a thing, you're broken, you sit over on the side, we'll pat you on the head, somebody will take care of your life for you. And I think that's cruel. And so I guess the best way I can say it is I believe in you, and especially if you're struggling. And so what this book is all of the nerd stuff and all of my lived experience and all of my 20 plus years sitting with hurting people. And I wrote this book for, not for psychiatrists and not for, I love Andy Huberman. He's like, I consider him a buddy, like not for his audience. This is for people who read 1 or 2 books a year, but it's a very digestible and a plan. What do I do? What are some things I could do in my life on a regular basis so that that light of hope comes back on? And some of that's dealing with really hard stuff, but, and it doesn't shy away from reality, but it's a plan for how do I build a life where my body's not ringing those alarms off the hook all the time.
That's so good. And John, where can they get that book at?
I mean, you can get it anywhere on Amazon, anywhere. You can go to johndeloney.com or ramseysolutions.com, but you can get it on Amazon. You can get it in all the bookstores. It's just out and about.
It's been a really great conversation. I feel really connected with you. Actually, I wanted to have you on because I connected with you when you were in Ramsey. You were incredibly funny, super high energy, and we have, our lives our way we're raised was very different, but our experiences were very similar. And so thank you so much for being on. I so appreciate you. You're one of my most interesting guests I've ever had on. And,
well, thank you for your hospitality, brother. I appreciate you.